Curro Holdings, as I was saying earlier, says it will soon roll out CurroPM. It's a new approach to teaching, which basically means it aims to provide pupils with the opportunity to choose an alternative afternoon learning schedule. From next year, pupils at Curro Durbanville High School will then have the option of choosing the afternoon schedule, or they can combine with a blended learning approach. For more on this, we can speak on the line now to Professor Mary Metcalf. She's with the University of Johannesburg. Professor, very good evening to you. Thankful for your time tonight. I was asking you earlier if this is indeed the future of education in South Africa.
Well, I think it's a very interesting experiment, and I will be watching it to see what we can learn from this approach. What they're doing is, from what I can see of the press reports, is they're focusing on learners between grades 7 and 9 who are performing fairly well at above 60, and they are allowing them to come in the afternoon from 1:45 to 6:30. Now, what's interesting about that is, firstly, that it makes us rethink what is the nature of the school day. We all are in a habit of thinking school starts 7:30, goes through to the afternoon. But, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 1 o'clock, depending on the age of the learners. But in other countries, there's other ways of managing the school day, including ways which incorporate much more arts and culture and sport into the school day.
Now, you mentioned, Prof, two factors, pardon me. The age of these children, these are grades 7, 8, and 9, as well as the fact that these are children who are already doing rather well academically.
Yes, they have to be, according to the press reports, they have to be getting about 60%. So that's because it seems to me, from what the press report reports, that there's much more emphasis on independent learning, virtual learning. And of course, that doesn't necessarily suit everyone. There is an intention, apparently, to include other grades in subsequent years. I think that one of the things that I would be very cautious about is the extent to which the learners are having a full and active social experience in the school. Because school is not only about the curriculum and learning the content of the curriculum, it's also learning to interact, adjusting to others, knowing what it means to be part of an institution, to follow rules, and the opportunities to do things with other learners other than sit in a class and answer questions. It's cultural activities, sport. Yeah.
And just on that note then, Prof, it would require, wouldn't it, a more holistic assessment of the individual needs of a child, because a lot of the reaction has limited it to, for example, many of us who dreaded waking up early to catch the school bus or make the trip to school, but it'll take a lot more than that to decide which child learns best at what time.
Absolutely, and how this routine fits with the parents' day in terms of the routines of getting children to school, fetching them from school. It just occurs to me as well that in the Cape, where this innovation is happening, the school's going to finish at 6:30. Now, my understanding of the Cape is that by 6:30 in winter, it's already dark. So this really is a family decision that would need to suit the family, and it's a school decision in terms of making sure they provide the best possible opportunity for the learners and take into account the challenges and demands on teachers.
I'm thinking of the public schools in South Africa at the moment. Yes, I know for many of them in rural and township areas there's also a safety concern in terms of when children, who many of them, by the way, don't have anyone to pick them up from school, so they'd have to walk. But I wonder if these two schedules may perhaps be, possibly, in those sort of schools, a solution to the space issues often with overcrowding in the classroom.
It did cross my mind if there is a demand and supply issue in relation to the school, if they have more applicants than they're able to accommodate, but I haven't seen any reference to that. In South Africa and in many countries where there is limited infrastructure for schooling, we have what we call platooning, double sessions, which means that there's a whole school that uses the buildings in the morning and another whole school that uses the building in the afternoon. And that's a way of maximizing the space. But when that happens, it can only work, in my view, when teachers are attached to the one school or the other and are not expected to teach the whole day. You know, the one thing, Temple, that's interesting is that one of the reasons that they give in the article that I've read is that learners that are adolescents, and 7 to 9 is early adolescence, I guess, often need to sleep longer in the morning. And in Finland, they actually did adjust the school day for adolescents to start later, so that the sleep cycle of adolescents wasn't being disrupted by having to wake up to go to school. So let's see how it goes.
And in terms of seeing how it goes, Prof, with any sort of research, it takes quite a while to decide whether or not an experiment is working. How much time would you think Curro would need to be able to decide if this is indeed the best way to go?
I would say that they would need to listen very carefully to the families, to the learners, to the teachers. I think if families are unhappy and they believe it's not working, I understand that they would have the option of returning to the morning session. In terms of the social impacts of this rather isolated group, which is not having as much face-to-face interaction with teachers, I would expect that there would be a careful monitoring of the social behavior and confidence and self-esteem of the learners, so that any difficulties could be identified quickly. In terms of learning, they will have the constant assessment of the learners' work to inform both the teachers and the families how the learners are doing.
Professor Mary Metcalf, good to have your time from the University of Johannesburg.